he just turned and ran at me. And luckily I had a Tacticam on the end of my shotgun, but when he was about 25 yards or so, I pulled the trigger, but it caught me so off guard I hadn't taken the safety off. So there's that moment as this coyote's running straight at you that I clicked the safety off and I shot him, and it was literally at 12 steps head on is where he dropped. So coyotes, that, like I said, there's just a rush with when a coyote does all the right things and comes in responding. There's nothing cooler than that to me.
Grab your gear, find your stand, and listen in as we share another journey that shapes a hunter's legacy.
Welcome back to another episode of A Hunter's Legacy, the only podcast that dishes the pros for the average Joes. If you don't know a little bit about what we do, I'd appreciate if you kind of looked in a little bit more. We spend a lot of time interviewing just the average Joe hunters, the guys that have stories to tell that may or may have not gotten them out there. So if you're interested in being a guest, that's what we're all about. Feel free to reach out and we can see if you're a good fit. So how we doing, Randy?
I'm doing excellent. It's a little bit warm and steamy, but it's making the corn grow, and getting the pictures of a lot of active deer, deer in velvet, and a lot of fawns. Kind of a good time of the year.
What do you do as a day job?
So as a day job, I work for a advertising agency. So I work from home, but we work in the recruitment advertising industry, specifically in the transportation industry. So we assist trucking companies across the country with their marketing and social needs and anything they need to try to attract truck drivers.
There you go. Yeah, you talked about corn growing. I didn't know if you were a farmer or what you were doing.
No, I live in the country, surrounded by farming. Kind of grew up working as a hired hand, and I'm pretty fortunate. I live just outside the town I grew up in, and after moving away for 20 years, it was an opportunity with my job working from home to live back here. So I kind of live in the same area in the fields where I grew up, chasing pheasants and rabbits and squirrels and everything else.
Okay. Where were you for 20 years when you moved away?
So I went to college. I went to Coe College in Cedar Rapids, and then my career took me. I worked for a trucking company, um, and moved to Indiana and Oklahoma City before moving back to Cedar Rapids, and so just kind of lived away during that time. And then once we got the chance to work from home and live pretty much anywhere, it just made a lot more sense to move back to small town living, which is what my wife is also from a small town. And it really, it's just the way not that nothing against Cedar Rapids or Oklahoma City or the cities we lived in, but we're country people at heart, and that's where we belong.
Perfect. Why don't you go ahead and share a little bit about your hunting journey? How old were you when you got started, and fill us in on that aspect of your journey?
Yeah. So probably like a lot of kids, I started when I was old enough to ask for a BB gun, and so we did a lot of our hunting working, actually going out with my brother-in-law, one of my brother-in-laws, and so we would carry our BB guns out on opening day after pheasants, and um, we'd be part of the hunt until we were old enough to finally carry a shotgun ourselves. But so and then in the meantime too, I got started trapping. It was always an active fisherman. I was outside any chance I could ever be, um, but really started learning a lot on my own, a lot with just rabbits and squirrels, and learning how to track, and then also learning how to trap and become a better outdoors person. And so I chased mainly small game for all of my growing up years. And of course, in Iowa, it really wasn't until the mid to late 80s before the deer numbers grew. But even when I started deer hunting in the 80s. At that time, to get any sex tag was a lottery, and even then you had to apply by zone. So you look at where we've come as a state, over the past 40 years or so, with just the deer hunting, and the same with turkeys. I love to turkey hunt, but turkeys weren't even in the area that I live, um, until probably 30 years ago. And it's just been 50 years since they really were introduced into the state of Iowa. And so once I started hunting turkeys, and then they became more prevalent in some of the areas that I had permission, then I grew addicted to turkey hunting really fast as well.
Your dad, sorry, your dad was the one that got you started, or?
No, it's a unique story. My dad was a fisherman, and so that's how I got started. We go up to Big Lake Winnebagosh in northern Minnesota twice a year. And unfortunately, my father passed away when I was really young. And
Sorry to hear that.
um, so my brother-in-law, who lived here in Garrison, um, was the one who really kind of got me started with the pheasant hunting. And my nephew, his son, and I were close. So that's kind of what led to getting the hunting route started, so to speak. And unfortunately, my nephew was killed in a bike accident, not long after my father died of cancer. And so I grew really close with my brother-in-law, Paul. And so we always maintained an opening day date for hunting pheasants. And Paul passed away, unfortunately, a few years ago. But I was fortunate enough uh, to set up a hunt, and because he had dementia. And as he had weakened, I actually set up a hunt and was able to take him for his last hunt. And, just you talk about special moments, and that's one that I'll always remember. But, being able to share something in his later years that he got me started in my beginning years.
Yeah, it sounds like kind of a rough patch there. How old was he when you got to take him out?
Paul was 80 to 82, somewhere in that area. So he was, and in fact, we'd set it up with a facility down by Williamsburg, and he had called me a few weeks before and said, I can't even pick up a shotgun. I can't go. And I said, Paul, you're going to go. We'll figure it out. And so we found one of his guns was light enough that he could carry. And I said, even if I have to carry it, and we'll hand it to you, when the dogs point. Um, but we ended up, and it is just one of those moments when we were hunting with a gentleman with his two Brittany's. And there was one point the dogs went on point, and I, just using a camera off of my phone, was able to videotape it. And so I got, him shooting a rooster, and the excitement, and being able to share that. So as he grew older and the dementia set in more and more, that was always the thing we talk about when I'd go to visit him was, hey, remember that last hunt? And he would just light up, even in the stages when he didn't remember people. I always felt he remembered that literally up until his dying day. So, you talk about what the outdoors means to us, and what it brings to each person. And that certainly was a life memory um, that I shared with him, but it shared with a lot of people ever since.
You hear a lot of people talking about taking kids and stuff, never the other way around, like that situation. Do you feel like that was your opportunity to give back for
Most definitely. Yeah,
all the people that helped you out?
most definitely. Yeah. And you bring up a good point, because on a separate note, I'm very active with the National Wild Turkey Federation, and we do a Jake's Day every year. But the thing, you kind of hit on it, is we're starting to focus just as much on adult education as we are with the kids. Because if the kids are hooked on it, that's great. But if there's no adult to take, they're not going anywhere. So I think, that the experience that I had has kind of led me to not introducing not only kids, and I've had the privilege of being with a number of young kids that have harvested their first animals, but also now being part of a bigger piece to help educate adults that want to get into the outdoors and help them in any way we can.
That's that's very interesting. You know, that's definitely something that needs to be done, and I feel bad for saying it because, like, my boss asked me, like, he found out I had a hunting podcast. He's like, man, you got to teach me so I can take my boys hunting. I'm like,
Yep.
it's pretty toxic. It's pretty toxic. Like, be careful. And it is. People get tied up with ground and, oh, that's my deer and stuff. But we got to find ways to get people into it, whether they're kids or adults.
Yeah. But we did, this was the first year our Bend County chapter did a adult turkey class. And so we had no idea what to expect. And the DNR co-sponsored it with our chapter. And so we just originally set it up, and this was an all day, and basically it was a field to fork. So not, all the way from, camouflage to decoys, calling, tents, all the way up to preparing the turkeys at the end of the hunt. And so we just set the limit at 15, not knowing if we'd have, 3 people sign up, and the 15 slots filled up within a short time, to the point that I've already had people talking to me about next year already. So we're going to open it up to 25 people next year, and then get more adults into the process. So
what do you
yeah,
think
it's
contributes to that? They want to get their kids out, or they have friends that do it?
I think it's a lot. What I hear a lot are people that grew up hunting and then for whatever reason just got out of it. And likewise, people that never had the opportunity to hunt a turkey, for example. But yeah, I think it's to the point that either it's their own kids or their grandkids, because I hear that part of it as well, that they want to be able to go out and help be part of something with their children. And it just feels like, and we did our Jake's Day just last month, and we had approximately 50 people. And each of those times, at the start of it, I'll just say, by show of hands, who has never shot a bow before and who's never shot a gun? And always somewhere between 10 to 20% of the participants, and this includes both kids and adults, raise their hands that they've never done that. So it just feels like, I think, I don't know, I have a positive outlook for the future of our, not only our hunting heritage, but our country. But it feels like more people are ditching the tablets and iPads, and they really want to learn about being outside again. And it's almost like, COVID hit and everybody became a hermit. And now 6 years later, there's that desire to get out and get dirt under your fingernails and actually participate and do things. And so we've seen just on both the kids and the adult side, just an increase in numbers of people who want to learn. And I've taught for the last 2 years an adult archery turkey class. And that's also been something that, again, people they want to learn the basics, but they don't know where to turn. And so it's something it's exciting for me, because it's a way that, again, you're giving back of, 30, 50 years of knowledge, whatever I've got, depending on the animal, that you can try to help people at least get a decent start when they go out for the first time.
Where do you think a lot of these people are going? Public? Once
Yeah,
they get started?
most cases public, but there are also some cases they've got a family member or a friend, somebody that's allowed them to have access to their land. But and that's probably split 50-50 would be my guess. There was 2 people in the turkey class this year that each shot turkeys. And one of the gentlemen was in the archery class, and his first day out shot the turkey with his bow, which is phenomenal to get a turkey your first trip out, but with a bow on top of it. But in his case, he had the opportunity to hunt some private land with a gentleman who had given him permission.
It's going to ruin hunting for him the rest of his life.
Well, he knows, and he was humbled the rest of the season, because he got the second tag, and he realizes that, well, for one, the land he was able to hunt was very well managed and private and had a big turkey population. And so his goal specifically was to do it on his own on public ground. And so he had the right approach to it.
What kind of mindset do you get out of these people that are, I mean, they probably know a little bit about hunting, but like the excitement to learn, what are some of the things you see at some of these courses?
They are, and some people have never hunted before. It's been kind of surprising to me. There's been a few people that have never actually hunted, and it's just they've learned or they just want to get started. Um, in every single case, they are enthusiastic. They have lots of questions. They ask a lot of great questions. You can tell that they think through it all, and because I try to also is taking everybody not only about hunting but the safety aspect as well as what you're physically doing in taking the life of an animal. And so the respect issue is also part of that. So you kind of you want to teach people to make sure that you respect the game that you're taking as well. And people really seem to enjoy that. And just there was a gal that was in one of the archery classes, and they've taken it to a whole nother level of how they use every single part of the deer, not just the meat, but and so she shared examples of what they did with everything. And so they were truly, taking it to the level almost of the pioneers in how they approached the hunting and the animal that they harvested.
Do you stay in touch with a lot of these people?
I stay in touch with a few. Yeah, I encourage everybody to always, they all have my number, and hey, text me, call me if you have questions. And like I said, just this year out of the all day hunting class, two of the gentlemen texted me pictures as soon as they got their turkey. So those were very special days because I get as excited for somebody that does that as if it's my own turkey hunt.
How long have you been doing that course?
So I've done the archery class for 2 years, and then just this year in March was our first time we ever did the full day turkey hunting class. So it's relatively new. We've done the Jake's Day. I've been a member of our chapter for close to 20 years, and we've done the Jake's Day every year that I've been a member.
Do you plan to expand that? I know you talked about add more people, but I'm just curious if if there's enough of this going on, not only turkeys, different species, and throughout the state as well.
So the DNR is trying to increase that because that's who reached out to us on the turkey piece. But I do know that there is also at least in Lynn County, was a field to fork archery deer class. And that's what literally led to me getting involved, is they reached out and said, hey, you're the president of the chapter. Do you know anybody that could help us? And that's how I got started. But it sounds like the DNR has done several of these turkey classes across the state. Ours was just one of those. I know it's something that's on the increase because we're seeing, just having, I'm a member of our Benton County Conservation Board, and I know we've got always a need to have more hunter safety or hunter's education classes. And so that's also a big push. So I think they're trying to do more things to expand opportunities. Probably not rapid enough, just because it's hard to find enough volunteers, either be certified hunter's eds or people that are willing to teach classes and do more things.
I'll have to think about that. I don't have a bunch of money to donate, but if we could do something with the podcast to help.
Well, that's really what it is. It's just awareness. And for us, like for Jake's Day, it's always been my goal to, I don't know that I want 300 kids, but we've had as many as 80 kids, and we're seeing more and more adults that stay for the day and participate. But so what we try to do is we set up stations so they can shoot 22s on a rifle range, trap shooting. There's an archery station. We have a camping station, a trapping station. And then the last 2 years, Ducks Unlimited has joined us. And so they set up a spread of decoys and then have a BB guns shooting targets out of duck blinds. And so our Benton County Conservation has joined us as a volunteer. Our Benton County Cattlemen's cooks the burgers, so we feed everybody for free. The Isaac Wald League donates their property, but they also help with the 22s and the camping. So we're trying to involve more than just our turkey group. And so that's the thing I'm trying to push out is, let's get as many of these, Pheasants Forever has been helpful with us in the past. But between all the conservation departments and the various volunteer groups is, I guess, to me, that's where I see the opportunity to try to really get those groups involved and grow things.
Somebody else brought this up. You might be interested in it. There's a guy by the name of Mike Covey from Vermont that's big into, he's not in the conservation board. I think so you have like the conservation, like the Ducks Unlimited, or then you have like the more of the government side of things. So he's on that side, like the laws and all that stuff. And he talks a lot about like making sure your voice is heard and all that stuff. You might like that one.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
And he talked about the collaboration between the conservation groups. And I'm sure it happens more than what I think, but maybe it doesn't. I don't know.
But we're pretty fortunate in Benton County because we've had really good participation from Pheasants Forever, Ducks Unlimited, of course, NWTF with our chapter, and our conservation staff. And I don't know if we're an exception or if that's the norm for everybody. I think a lot of it is, and I'm seeing, so we've purchased a couple properties through county conservation that have increased. We've added almost 400 acres of public property in the last 5 years in Benton County alone. And some of those groups have been very integral in not only donating, but helping spread the word on raising funds to buy those properties. So there is a huge need. We talk about opportunities for getting people into the outdoors, but also to protect the resources. Being in a farming state and, out of respect, we need to farm agricultural land, but the land that's not agricultural needs to be protected. And, we certainly need a lot more public opportunities for people to go to and use.
Before we move on, every state has different titles, but he is the executive director of Vermont Traditions Coalition. And I think he is responsible for like bringing conservation groups together at like speaking events. Like he speaks to like other government officials. He'd be a good one to get in touch with and just talk to on the phone. I can send you his contact information. But yeah, he's very passionate about that. So you're able to get some ground. I was going to ask you this. So you talk about ground not used for agriculture. So growing up in north central Iowa, I'm 37. I got a little taste of the mid 90s, the pheasant population, and then the lack of pheasant population. And like the last couple of years seemed really good. And then you look at the numbers, like 3 times as many birds were killed in the mid 90s. But it's a direct correlation with the amount of money government's paying for CRP acres. Unbelievable how much difference it makes.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you compare those numbers to the 70s, what the pheasants were, Iowa competed with South Dakota for the most pheasants harvested.
Really?
And, yeah, and so, but that during those times, it was, we didn't have the chemicals to spray, so corn was a lot of foxtail. So even if they cut corn, you could still walk a cut cornfield. Of course, there were fence rows and creeks weren't straightened and all those different practices to utilize the ground. And so, yeah, we've been our own worst enemy in eliminating habitat and places for pheasants and other animals in general to expand. And I think, and again, it's, one good example. So we purchased 160 acres, which is Benton County's only protected fen. And a fen is a floating bog, basically. But it was farm ground prior to us acquiring this property. But it was basically it's flooded ground. So the ground had a very low CSR, and it was wet. And so we were able to purchase it, and it raised the eyebrows of local farming groups, and even to the point that I was called in along with our conservation director to meet with the senator of our area at the time. And so we described that, and this property was for 160 acres was $1.1 million. And, what they're trying to do is say, hey, that's property a young farmer now cannot purchase. And we're saying what young farmer can purchase $1.1 million of marginal crop ground that's going to flood every other year? And be able to be a successful farmer. So what we've kind of tried to do, at least here in our county, is focus on areas that are not farmable, but we purchased 190 acres that adjoined one of our county parks, called Wildcat Park. And so that was a lot of timber, but had we not purchased it, we pretty much know that it would have probably been bought and made into a housing development. So, suddenly all of that, what now is a 300 plus acre park, would have been 134 acres that we still have, but minus the 190 that we were able to protect. So it's not only farming, but it's also other things that are coming against that land.
You think pheasants like timber?
They're in it more than people realize.
I've realized that the past couple of years. I don't know if it's always been that way or they just adapted to coyotes, but I hunt 40 acres between two like big CRP patches, and I see a lot more pheasants running through that timber than deer.
Yeah.
Do you know why it is?
I'm the same. I see them during bow season. I hear them. And I agree. I think it's probably depending on the season and the type of timber it is. They have better vision. They can see through timber better than they can a CRP field, or maybe it's a food source that's there that they're eating. But
do you think
yeah,
it's
I think
always been that way?
it doesn't feel like it to me. I don't recall seeing pheasants in timber as much as I have the latter 5 or 10 years.
I mean, I don't either. And it makes you wonder if they learn to adapt.
I think so.
I mean, a coyote can't get them in there. I mean, they can, but all they got to do is hop up in a branch and they're safe. Why wouldn't they be in there?
Yep. Yeah, and coyotes have gotten very brave. Well, and I think, again, it gets back to what's hurt the pheasant numbers is if you leave just a small strip through the middle of the fields, and even now that most of those are baled for hay, or farmers just mow them to look pretty. But that's a real easy piece for a coyote to hunt. And so I think pheasants learn to go to big places or big areas of cover where they're safe, because chances are if I'm in a strip or a hen nest, that coyote's only got 20 yards wide or 20 feet wide, whatever the size is, and it's pretty easy to sniff out and find.
It makes you wonder, why wouldn't they live in the woods? So they spend all day in the woods where I'm at, and then they fly out into the grass and sleep out there. That doesn't make any sense.
I think there's a lot of similarities between turkeys, because turkeys are kind of the same. They're roosting in the trees, but pretty much, especially the spring, this time of the year, the roosters are all out looking pretty, and they want to be out in the open where they can attract hens and and do their thing. So,
but
I think
the pheasants are spending the night out in the grass, aren't they?
they do roost some.
Some.
So, yep. And I don't know what dictates where they roost. So we purchased 12 acres that we built on, when we decided to move back to the country. And one of the first things I did is I dug cedar trees out of a ditch. And so I've got 25 cedar trees planted just west of the house. And then this used to be just an old cow pasture. And so I plant about an acre of corn south, it's just straight south as I'm looking. Um, but during the wintertime, the pheasants roost in those cedar trees. And, it's always proof of if you build it, they'll come, because even with my little 12 acres and just an acre of corn, last winter at one point, it was in January when we had, we always get that week or two of really bitter cold and snow. Actually, I take it back. This year was December when we had almost we had over a foot of snow, I guess, in the first 2 weeks of December.
It started around I think Thanksgiving weekend is when
It did, right after Thanksgiving, yeah. But during that time, at one point, I counted 32 pheasants that flew from my cedars out into the corn, and so again, just having it doesn't take, people sometimes think it takes big expanses of land for animals, but I mean, 12 acres here is proof that it doesn't take a whole lot as long as you got the right type of habitat for them.
Are you replanting that corn every year?
I sure do. Yeah, they clean it out completely, the deer and the pheasants.
Yeah. The best food plot I ever walked, and yours might not be big enough, but they'd, let's say it's 5 acres. Well, they'd plant half or maybe planted it all the first year. And then the next year they planted half. And then the next year they planted the other half. So it was sitting out there for a couple years, and that giant ragweed would grow in there. Oh my gosh, the birds. I'd never seen birds get out of stuff like that before, but it's like a year and a half sitting there, standing corn with giant ragweeds, and my gosh, it held some birds.
Well, and I think too, it just goes to show, and that's why native prairie is so important, because you need that thicker stalks to uphold, to hold up against wind and snow that maintains cover. Because a lot of grasses, the brome and things that are in our ditches, the snow just lays it down, and so that's probably what helps. But yeah, mine at times looks like a big weed patch, but it's not, and that's never bad necessarily. But yeah, they usually this last year, once the snow hit, the deer and everything, you couldn't find a kernel of corn in the thing anymore.
See, I grew up on a farm. So when I do my food plots, it's tough, man. I don't know if I could not spray weeds on fence lines of a field, but I know it's good for pheasants. It's the farmer mentality. Like, I know when we plant corn, I should just not spray it if it's starting and just let the weeds come in. I just can't do it, man.
Well, and even I just last weekend did Roundup on my corn because the grass and it would overcompete it, and I wouldn't end up with any corn but it'll still, once you get through that initial shock and the corn gets going, there'll still be plenty of weeds and things that grow up. It's not a clean field by any means. So, um, and I've even the last couple of years have been planting pumpkins, and so they help cover the ground a little bit, but the deer actually they'll eat the pumpkins in the wintertime when it gets really cold. So they kind of serve a dual purpose then.
Have you ever tried anything other than corn, like milo or sorghum?
I've had milo. Yeah, I did that one year, and that worked out pretty well. It was just harder to, I don't know, it didn't do as well as what corn does. I've tried beans, I've done turnips. Um, they all had their advantages, but ultimately for me, and I think it's more just my spot where I'm at. Um, Corn is what works because there's timber to the east of me. It's open cow pasture, and there's timber. So I do late muzzleloader season, and the deer. It's pretty simple. I shouldn't say simple, but deer come from the timber into the corn to feed. So there's kind of a dual purpose for me in that.
I think soybeans are the worst food plots. I mean, they work. They just don't last.
Yeah.
At all. Like, if you're doing late muzzleloader and you only have an acre of beans, they're probably not going to be there for late muzzleloader.
No, they won't.
That's my problem with them.
Yeah.
Do you think you ever run out of corn with an acre of corn by late muzzleloader?
Yep, I do every year. And then to the good. They're not generally what I see here more than anything are the does and younger bucks. The timber, and I'm fortunate that my family owns the timber and that's where I hunt, but it's surrounded by cow pasture. So I'm sitting on field edges as they're coming into the cut, the actual planted, cut corn more so than coming all the way another 300 yards to where my little food plot is. So
Isn't that amazing? Where I have the food plot is closer, like it's right next to the timber. They'll walk right past that standing corn teed off a cut cornfield.
yeah, a lot of browse. Yeah. So
I think it's just more natural for them to eat off the ground. Plus, they can see.
yep, I think so. Yeah, last year I tried, and my food plot's kind of like my brother-in-law will disc it for me, and then I have another neighbor that will plant it. And last year we planted out of a 4-row planter, 2 rows beans, 2 rows corn, just to see if, the thought being that we'd alternate those 2 rows every year. So, help fertilize and do all the right things. But the beans just didn't compete or hold up to do anything, and I ended up with just 2 rows of corn that they cleaned out a lot sooner this last winter. So I went back this year to 100% corn again.
I think it would work if you went wider. How many rows wide do you think you are?
How many rows wide? What do you mean?
Like, how wide do you think your food plot is?
Oh, it's probably, it's an oval shaped. So, gosh, I don't know. Probably,
Could you do like 8, 8, 8? Like 8 rows corn, 8 beans? I don't know if 4 would be enough.
planted ice. Yeah.
Because, just too much shade. At least if
Yeah.
you were a little bit wider, I think it'd work. I think it was just 2 rows wasn't enough. Pretty interesting idea, though.
Yeah. And that was, it was a case of what the neighbor wanted to do on his. And since he's so kind to do it, I help get the corn and then he does it because he's, you talk about a great neighbor. He literally took his, if he had 80 acres that was productive farm ground that a few years ago, he just said, I'm going to put it all to native prairie. And so he's a big habitat person. And so he's very happy to come and, since I'm just planting it and leaving it for the animals, he comes out and does it every year for me.
I wonder if there's any. I've always wanted to try planting something like rye. I know it wouldn't do a ton of good for pheasants, but like in August, throw some rye out as like a cover crop or something, trying to get something established because an acre of corn doesn't go very far with deer. Like turnips is the only thing I can get to last until late season.
Yeah. Yeah, I did clover. And I own a little 4-acre patch in Tama County, and it's actually an old railroad right of way, but it's got a lot of habitat around it. And I've got 2 little clover plots, and that's for the investment of just getting down there, and each plot is maybe, I don't even think they're a quarter of an acre in size, but it's as much as I could clear, and um, but the deer are in that stuff every single day, and it lasts all the way up until till freeze. So it's a good archery place, and so that's been the only thing I've been successful with beyond corn, I guess.
And I'm glad you said that. So in southern Iowa, clover's big, like late season, like even maybe not late, but during the rut.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't it's not very good for deer season where we're at. You might get like the first part of October, it's good. Majority of bow hunting and shotgun clover, they don't touch it.
Yeah, they do. I think it seems like it creates a habit though. And then the other thing that I did is, we've been in a drought for 4 years now. Hopefully this year we're doing much better with rain. But I've actually put 2 25 and a 25 and a 30-gallon tub that I buried and fill with water. And so I also keep that on my little 4-acre piece. And so it just seems like it's just creating the habits of the deer coming through there, whether it's to grab a bite of clover or to gather a drink. And it seems to work anyway.
Are you on the same page as me? Do you feel like that they shut off on going to the clover at some point, like once it starts getting cold?
Well, I think once it freezes and then it basically kills the plant, and then that's what brings the life to turnips, because then it shoots all the sugars, into the stalk or whatever. But
Allegedly, yeah.
yeah, but yeah, clover, I think the plant pretty much dies, and it's probably just not as tasty to the deer anymore.
Yeah, I suppose in southern Iowa they just get longer growing season.
Yeah, yeah, I had up until this last fall, I owned 60 acres in northern Missouri, and I planted clover all along my driveway and everything in, and there's probably from here to there was an average of maybe 10-degree difference. So yeah, where we may hit our first freeze in mid-October, it was, beginning of November, 2 weeks later, maybe down there. So there certainly was an advantage for the temperature there.
Was that did you live down there or just kind of a little getaway?
It was just a recreational property, so it was a hunting property, and owned it for over 15 years. And um, it was just one of those, you always dream about buying land, and it actually, I learned, well, when the stock market crashed in '08, and I watched a 401k just crash, and you lose 40% of its value. That was at the point I realized that I wanted land, and I'd already been looking quite a bit, and so I had an opportunity to purchase this. And what was a nice change was that in Missouri, the state taxes, even when I sold it, was still, I paid less than $80 a year for 60 acres. And it was rugged. It was timber. Had a nice pond in the center of it. Um, I learned a lot owning it, and actually went through timber stand improvement, and was doing a lot to make it better for wildlife, and it was really effective. But I also realized that as you get older, being 3 hours away was too far, and so I couldn't get down there enough. And when I was there, all I did was worked. And so we had an opportunity to purchase a house on a private lake, and we're 45 minutes away, and so that made more sense to my wife and the family. So I gave up my little my little 60 acres, which I'm still sad, but it was the right thing to do.
Hopefully you got a boat on the lake.
I do. Yep, I've got a boat, and
You gotta give and
it's
take a little bit, right?
yeah, and we've used it already a lot, so we're there quite a bit, and it's not been a bad trade-off. And the other nice thing is it takes me 20 minutes to mow, and I have more time to relax and fish and do things than if I went to Missouri. I was 3 days straight of cutting, planting, doing something, cutting invasives, doing whatever I had to do. And so yeah, it's been a nice change.
Is that your primary residence or a getaway?
So where we live outside of Garrison's our primary residence. And
Okay, because I thought you said something about building on a cattle pasture.
Yep,
I
so
didn't.
that's where we built. Yep.
I was questioning whether I heard you right or if that was just for recreational. Yeah, I was gonna ask you because I hunt back home, so I grew up. I don't know if it's any closer to you, Riceville.
Riceville.
So it'd be 20 minutes north of Charles City.
Okay, so quite a bit. Yeah.
Right between Cresco and Osage. Very similar to where you're at, but it it stinks being 2 hours away. Like I want to go out and do stuff, and there's just weekends, and so if I ever buy ground, it's probably gonna have to be where I live. I don't know if I could, like if that's what opportunity you have, sure, but not my first choice.
Well, so first off, buying land was the best thing I ever did. Um, and in the 15 years, the land value more than tripled, and I got a lot of enjoyment. I've got one of my best bucks ever on the wall that I shot there. And um, so to be able to buy something, and then we actually, as part of the timber stand improvement, did a partial timber harvest. So I received money from the land during the ownership, and then was able to sell it, and then certainly buy another house and couple lots for the same money that I sold. So it was a great thing to do. But yeah, the one thing I learned from it and like I said, I've got 4 acres that's 20 minutes away, but it doesn't take a lot of land to be a successful place to hunt if it's in the right location. So yeah, you're in line with saying I want to be close, because proximity and being able to enjoy it more it means a lot. And in just in 15 years, yeah, it would literally, I'd be having to plan out, and then you have to almost take an extra day off of work on Friday, and then you got the 3-hour drive, and then Sunday you're having to leave mid-afternoon so you can get back and get things unloaded and ready for the work week again. Um,
Yeah, I
and I
knew when
just had to
you
know.
talked about recently selling. I know what everybody knows what ag land prices are doing. Uh, Recreational grounds getting just as bad, and you don't earn much money off of them either.
Well, if you find the right pieces, and I mean, granted, we don't ever know what things are going to look like in 10 or 15 years, but there's a steady increase. I've got
But in terms
uh,
of annual revenue, it's not.
right. No,
It's
yeah.
pretty much zero compared to farm ground, but it's people are paying $7,000 just for hunting ground.
Yeah.
Like
Or
in southern
more.
Iowa, and that's what it costs to buy farm ground. Like, wow.
Yeah, I've got a flyer. I went to the Iowa Deer Classic in the year 2000, and I saved a real estate flyer, and it had land in southern Iowa selling for $500 to $800 an acre. And so you think, that's really, I mean, 26 years ago, what the price has done, in that time. And there's a number of properties that I had looked at that I didn't move on, that, to this day I kick myself going, geez, if I would have just taken the step, and, but it took that stock market crash to force me. And I literally cashed in a majority of an IRA to do it, which people told me I was stupid to do. But um, 15 years later, it was a better investment than what that IRA would have done for me.
Mm-hmm. It almost makes you worried about where hunting is heading in terms of how much money you need to get into it. Not only land, equipment, it's just the land is just way too competitive. There's always going to be somebody walking up to a landowner's place with an open checkbook.
Yeah, and that's the reason, again, and you referenced it earlier, that you don't have a lot of money, and that's kind of been my life. But that's where I've determined that I was going to volunteer. And so doing these different groups, that even if I can't purchase myself, if by being in one of these groups it helps purchase or protect land that we can at least use, that 160 acres that I mentioned, um, it gets a crazy amount of pheasant traffic. It's almost all native prairie, and it's got water. I mean, it's perfect pheasant habitat. And opening day, you'll see 60 to 80 birds kind of thing, but it gets pressured multiple times opening weekend, and then throughout the season almost on a daily basis. But it just goes to show we don't have enough of that type of ground available for people.
What kind of habitat's on that 160?
So so again, and you may have at some point in your life been on a fen and didn't realize it, but a fen is literally a land mass that floats on water, and the water's, they try to drain it and you never can.
What's that
So
called? How do you spell that?
fen, Fen. And so there's a lot of native plants that, and so if you've ever been on one, it's got a lot of, I don't know what you'd call them, mounds or hills. It's really difficult to walk, not to
Oh,
mention
yeah, I call them bogs,
yeah,
where
so yep.
you feel like you're walking on basketballs, and if you step in the wrong place, you'll roll an ankle. But when it's flooded, it's get you up just high enough to keep your boots from getting wet.
Yep. And so just that aspect of it has a lot of habitat. But then they took all this the majority of it was tillable ground, and so it was all planted to native prairie. And then on the south side of it has, um, again, for the water to as part of the water mitigation, um, has some a couple ponds. So there's literally a lot of ducks and birds and other things that migrate through there every year. And so I didn't realize how many birders there are in our county and our state until we had this property. And there are people out there with their binoculars looking at all the different bird species all the time, which is really cool.
Well, I was just kind of curious because there's definitely different types of habitat that like it's very tough to get the birds out of.
Yeah.
I can't think of what that would be, but I know I've walked somewhere where you're like, birds are in there, but you just can't get them out. So I was just kind of curious what kind of habitat, or is it tough to get the birds out?
Yeah. So the native prairie is a lot of the big blue stem, switchgrass, Indian grass. So some of that stuff is 6, 7 feet high or more. So that's some of that type of, unless you've got dogs, and even if you have dogs, roosters, what makes a prairie so effective is that rather than brome, which just is like your grass, like your yard, where it's just spread out, native prairie tends to grow in clumps. So it's a clump of big blue or switchgrass. So it allows birds and, animals a way to duck and move around underneath kind of that canopy of leaves. And so and again, that's what makes it effective for them to live, to lay their nest, lay their eggs and survive.
You get some nasty cattails too. That'll hold some birds. People overlook like the marshy cattail stuff, especially when stuff freezes over. That's money.
Yep, they are. Yeah, and that's again another stalk that stays up and upholds itself against the snow and everything else, and it keeps them warm. And yeah,
What's your favorite type of habitat to walk for pheasants?
well, I mean, ideally, if you get sorghum or something that it's, chest high that you can actually see over. We do hunt native prairie, and that can be tough. Uh, I've got a friend up in Green Bay that, in fact, we're going this weekend as our annual Green Bay fishing trip, but uh, we met and become good friends because he loves to pheasant hunt and he's a former fishing guide. So we trade hunts every year. And so in that case, we walk a lot of waterways and that's probably the best when you're knee high grass and you've got dogs and you can really, I love to watch dogs work more than anything else.
It makes you a bad shooter because you get distracted, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. You have too much time to think.
An extra second to your shot time when you're watching a bird.
Yeah, and it's you know where they're at if they're pointed, and then you know the pressure's on.
The waterways are fun. The only challenge is they'll keep moving in front of you and you never catch up to them.
Yep, they sure do. They're fun, and it's great that the state is seeing a bounce back. And it's kind of, I think part of that's the benefit of the drought because we haven't had those waterways getting washed out with spring rains and things. But I know the numbers around here are triple or even more than what we've seen in the past. So that's pretty exciting.
When you're walking big sections, I like asking people this because I kind of discovered it recently. Let's say you're walking like an 80 with like 3 or 4 people. How would you approach that?
So we walk one piece that's probably 150 acres, and so we tend to and we've got generally when we do it, we've got 2 dogs, but we try to stick to the edges and then we try to do as slow of pass throughs as we possibly can, trying to keep dogs close. And there's always, in this case, there's a couple of hills, and we know that the thicker grass is down in the bottom of these valleys, and you'll either see roosters there or on the edges. So we try to do the outside edge first, and then hunt towards the center. And I don't know if that's a psychological thing that the birds realize they need to go to the middle and then that's where they're going to have to hide or what, but that seems to work best for us.
So the trouble is, if you walk too much to the outside, and then by the time you get on the birds, the dogs are tired.
Yeah.
And that's how we've always done it. But we had 5 people, 6 people, and 3 dogs. I'm like, all right, let's split up. And they're like, no, like just try, no, try it. So we took 3 people and walked this outside. 3 people walked this outside. And then we came and met in the middle. We crushed them.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Instead of walking together around the outside, half went this side, half went this side, met, and then walked the middle. We just crushed them. Like, we didn't try hammering them when we were getting them up on the edge. We just kind of let them go, and then kind of used our best judgment on where to walk when we met in the middle, because our bird dogs would always get tired, and we'd know where the birds were, and the dogs just didn't have anything left. And we tried it. We'll be doing it again. It's
Oh, yeah. Yeah, if you got a big enough group to do that. Yeah, we generally have 2 or 3 up to 4 of us generally, so we generally don't have a big group.
yeah, it gets a little tougher. But yeah, it's the first time we've ever limited out on that big piece, because big pieces are tough to hunt. What do you run for dogs?
So so the gentleman that I hunt with the most has poodle pointers, which are, if you've ever hunted with, or if you know what a poodle pointer is, they're a bigger, muscular dog, kind of a wire-haired.
Do they shed?
No, they don't. They don't shed.
Do you have a
And they
dog
have,
in the background now?
yeah, we got a little frou-frou dog.
I hear something
Who's
shaking off back there.
yeah, we have a Shih Tzu. So I had a Brittany for 13 years, and I hunted every single pheasant moment I possibly could. And in fact, right, this rooster over my shoulder is I got her when she was probably closer to 3 months old. Wasn't planning on getting a dog and was actually looking at a boat. Long story short, I get the dog instead of the boat and learned I taught her to hunt myself. And that was mainly just discipline. But the first time I ever took her out was literally, and it just turns out it's just over the hill from where we live now. And she went on point, and she's 9 months old, and points this rooster, and he flushes, and I shoot him, but he lands across a small waterway. And so she goes down through the water, through all the grass, and then comes dragging this rooster, and I'm just in tears with what that it all worked, the first time out. And so that's the bird she brought back to me, and that's the bird that I've got mounted as a result.
So my black lab, she made it 5 years, cancer, and spent a bunch of money, and it didn't work out. But I'm so glad I got a bird mounted from her when I did.
Yeah. Well, and in fact, the quail was a double that I shot that she pointed, and it ended up being a hen and a male, both that. So I had them mounted. So yeah, both of those are from that Brittany. So I'm a big Brittany guy. In fact, when this dog's going to be 3, but I had a real struggle. I almost got another Brittany, but just because of my work and everything else, just having time to dedicate to training and everything was just a lot harder. So so I didn't go that route.
So I'm curious about these poodle pointers, because I never in a million years thought I'd get something different. But I live in town. The shedding, I don't know if I can do that again. I was cleaning up hair a year later. I'm serious. Like, it was bad.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm intrigued by like if I lived in the country and had like a nice dog kennel outside, wouldn't even be a question. But if I'm going to have a dog in the house, I don't know if it's going to be a lab right now. So how were those poodle pointers to hunt with? Like, are they decent?
They're good. Yeah. So they get, I'd say, in the 60 to 75 pound range. So they're they're more muscular than like German short hair. But they've got excellent noses. They're a pointing dog. Um, Probably if there's a disadvantage to them over some of the others is that because they're muscular, when you talk about running out of energy, or the other thing too is just got to be careful of it being too warm. Um, they don't take heat probably as well as maybe some of the smaller dogs do, um, but just hunting over them they're as fun as any dog I've hunted with, and again they're just and Ryan, who has the two, their personalities are just huge, and most dogs are, but for whatever reason, those two are they're like little kids. But
I was just looking up pictures because I probably heard of them, but never looked. They kind of look fairly similar to like a wire hair or a griffin,
yeah,
maybe. I don't.
yep, yeah. When you hear the word poodle, you picture Poodle, and they're far from that. But yeah, they got the real feathery face, and um, now they can get you know the burrs and things aren't friends to them, which they aren't to any dog. I mean, even when I had the Brittany, I shaved as much of the extra fur off of her legs and things as I could. Yeah, they're
I'd rather deal with that than 365 days of shedding hair all over the
yeah.
house. That's interesting because I was definitely looking at the wire hair and just exploring options
Hmm.
rather than just labs. But that's good to hear that they're actually pretty good hunting dogs. I don't think people realize poodles were bred to hunt. I can't remember what they're bred to hunt for, but they're bred to hunt something.
Well, most any dog has some history of whether it was going in or ground after groundhogs or even small dogs had some purpose at some point for an animal. But
I'm trying to think something was surprising that was bred for badgers.
maybe like dachshunds or something like that, if I
Yep.
recall.
Wiener dogs, yeah.
Yeah,
Isn't that incredible? A badger would destroy one of those things.
you would think. Yeah, you'd have to be a nasty little dog to put up with one of those in their own territory. But
Maybe we just don't understand the dynamics because there's no reason a mountain lion should be afraid of dogs.
no, and maybe it's the case where and I've never done it, but I've seen guys that use decoy dogs for coyotes, and so maybe that's the same principle. They're getting the the badger mad, and he comes running out chasing them or something.
Yeah, that'd be a tough game to play. The dog decoys, because you sure as heck wouldn't want to spend a lot of money on a dog and have it like be your best friend and send them out doing that.
No, and coyotes are smart animals. In fact, when we first moved here, um, I'm working from my office, and I seen two coyotes go up across the pasture away from me, and they just sat. And this is middle of the day, and in fact, that was at the time I had my Brittany, and she was outside, and one of those coyotes saw my dog and literally come running straight down the hill towards her. And so I was on the phone. Hung up and ran outside with my rifle, and the coyote was sitting right on the facing hillside, kind of just waiting for my dog to come back out. And um, yeah, they can be very aggressive with dogs from what
How close of a call was it?
the coyote was probably 80 yards from the house is where it literally was sitting as I'm looking. I mean, it was sitting on the hillside facing us, probably 80 yards from my house. And it was
This was
two
after
and a
it
half
ran towards the house or before?
after it did. Yeah. So it had been 300 yards out in the pasture and then ran all the way close to the house. Of course, I hollered for the dog to come in, and then I snuck around with the rifle. And unfortunately, I missed. I missed the coyote. I rushed my shot, but yeah, it had no fear.
Well, that'd piss a guy off. Even seeing a coyote trying that stuff.
Yeah, yeah, they're brave. I've got unfortunately, um, I've got a photo just a few days ago. There's two different does that have raised fawns in immediately in around our house, and I've got a photo of one of the fawns getting caught um, late last week. and by a coyote, and I've got the picture of the coyote actually carrying the fawn off, in the
Trail
middle of the
camera.
trail camera. Yeah. And that's literally less than 100 yards from the house as I'm looking out right now. And so, they're, and I think that's why the does always have babies around here, is that at least they get used to people, but they know it's less likely for coyotes. So it didn't work in that case.
You get a thermal.
I'd love to. I, I've
That'd
shot
help you.
one once.
They're a lot of fun, aren't they?
Oh my gosh.
I had 2 of them. I just couldn't justify keeping them around to get out a couple times a year, but I'd probably choose that over just about anything hunting.
Yeah, and I've called a lot of coyotes. If you had to rank hunting, I would have trouble between archery, deer, spring turkey, and calling coyotes. They're all right up there. And a neighbor, and I'm not a big gun geek. I mean, I own guns, but I use them just specifically for hunting. I'm not somebody that just goes shoots. But the neighbor that I had in Missouri, I had beaver problems, and I was having trouble trapping. I trapped several beavers, and I had one. He was smarter than me, and the neighbor let me borrow his AR that had a thermal on it. And it's the first time in my life when I looked through that lens, and when I shot it, I just said, okay, this is the way cool factor sprung off the charts.
Did you get that beaver?
No, I put the scope right on him, and the water exploded right where he was at. And then the neighbor told me a while later, he's like, hey, I think you probably missed the beaver. Because I told him, I said, I never saw the beaver floating. But I said, I had a rest and I was solid. And he said, I shot the gun and it was off like 6 inches to the right or something. And where I would have shot it, roughly 90 yards, whatever my shot was, would have been way off. So he's like, yeah, I think you missed him. So, but it was still cool to shoot. That was for sure.
It's amazing what you can see through those things. It's way different than what you see on TV, where all you see is like the hot spot. Like you can see definition of everything around you.
Yeah, that night when I had it, and my pond was down a steep hill, and I just turned it on before, and there was a deer down, I don't know, 150 yards away, and it was just, yeah, like, black and white. But um, yeah, and in fact, I saw a coyote moving through my timber that same night, while I was sitting there waiting for the beaver to come out. And yeah, just it was a great experience. And there's several guys around here that have them, and I've talked to them. It's just, again, that how much how much money do you put towards it, because you want to get something that's decent quality too.
I mean, it'd be hard not having one if I could look out my back door every night. I can tell you that.
I've thought of it, yeah. And especially now, I'd love to have one. Just I'm hoping here in the next couple of days I'm going to get out and do some calling. And but yeah, the places where I normally call in the pasture, now the grass is waist high, and so I've got to get out in an open field somehow to try to get them out during daylight. But we'll see if I can do it.
That's changed a lot in the past couple of years with the popularity of thermals. It's a lot tougher to call them in.
It is.
They get educated, and there's a lot of people going out calling. Like, people just didn't do it during the day, but once thermals got cheap enough, man, everybody and their sister was doing it. It's even in the 2 years I did it, first year is like shooting fish out of a barrel. Like, you could just go sit in the middle of any field and they'd come to you. By the end of second year, man, it changed a lot.
Yep, someday maybe, but yeah, well, and the neighbor that borrowed, he had over $10,000 in his gun and thermals, and so at that point when he told me that, I said, "Oh, I would have never borrowed it had I known he had that much money wrapped into it." But
Just one gun?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
expensive.
it was a beauty. It was the nicest gun I've ever shot, and I mean, he had top of the line. It was a custom AR, and it was beautiful. But I'm sure he had the top end thermal that went on top of it too. So
Or you can spend 10 grand just on a thermal.
yeah, yeah.
I don't know if you've listened to any episodes, but we usually like to wrap these up the same way. Have you listened to any yet?
I have, yeah.
So we'll wrap this up. We'll do the rapid fire question, see what you got, and then we'll wrap it up with some embarrassing stories, unless you don't have any.
There's all kinds of them, I guess. It's how stupid a turkey can make you look, or a deer, or yeah. There's
Okay, rapid fire. First one, best hunting gear purchase you've ever made.
best hunting gear purchase I ever made would be my bow.
What do you shoot?
I have a Matthews, and which is for years I shot PSE, but as you get older, um, and I'm not blessed with a lot of upper body strength, but a Matthews for me just it had a smoother draw, and I was able to upgrade. But it was something, I never thought I'd spend that amount of money on a bow, but I'm thankful for it because I realize I use that more than any other piece of equipment since you bow hunt from. I'm not a diehard that I go out October 1st unless the weather's right, but I carry it a lot more than I do any other piece of equipment by far.
That's exactly right. You spend a lot of time carrying them, don't you?
Yes, you do.
A lot of time carrying them and not a lot of time pulling them back. What about best or most gimmicky, or the one piece of hunting gear that you regret the most? You bought into the hype and realized it wasn't worth the hype.
Probably scent wafers and just a lot of the scent elimination stuff. Thinking that you can beat a deer's nose and realizing that I've learned in all my years that I'm better off washing with just a regular neutral detergent that's scent free, and I hang stuff out and I put it in Rubbermaid containers. And so all the scent, luckily I never bought any of the scent clothing as much, but
They don't even make it anymore, really.
no,
Majority of the stuff people buy, it's not scent clothing.
right. Yeah. So yeah, just all and the scent wafers. In fact, I just a couple of weeks ago cleaned out, and those wafers still are so strong in my containers. I had to soap wash them out and let them sit outside. Um, but the idea being you're going to smell like dirt, so deer aren't going to notice you. Well, you don't smell dirt November 15th when it's bitter cold outside. So I learned the hard way with those.
Yep. I think people are starting to realize that. What about hunting luck versus skill percentage?
I would say skill 80%, luck 20. I would put, and then I'd throw patience at 98, which I know wasn't part of it, but I've had more successful hunts over the years because I've been patient. Um, than when I thought I had to move, or it was, I'm tired, I need to get down from the stand, or turkeys aren't here.
Archery cold. Cold is the big battle. Or bored. What about a hunting hot take? Do you have any controversial ones?
I despise hunting shows.
Have you always been that way?
No, I grew up watching I grew up watching, Virgil Ward fishing shows when, you had 3 channels, and the early days of some of the hunting shows when they were more authentic. I think hunting shows have done more to damage our sport than they do to help. And we're teaching people all the things not to do. And when we're grading people on how successful their hunts were, or pressuring, the pressure on to shoot bigger deer, it does it for all the wrong reasons. And I also I'm a big fan, having grown up trapping and hunting small game. I think we're missing a lot. At the very start, we talked about why we're here. And that's because I think we take a lot of kids, and how many kids in Iowa do we see youth season that are sitting on dad's lap that shoot 170-inch buck, and they're 6 years old and they have no idea what they just did. I'd really like to see, and that's why we've done a lot with our Jake's Day to try to get more youth activity. So talk about trapping and small game, and start doing the small things again, and really build up the enjoyment of the outdoors. And again, I think that's where these hunting shows take them all we're doing is rewarding for shooting big deer. And most of those people doing it haven't put the hours in.
Unrealistic expectations all
Right.
across the board. Most underrated hunting tactic.
Most underrated, well, I kind of just said it, patience. I would also probably say just hunting the wind in general, and that's for thinking through deer and coyotes specifically. And maybe that's something that everybody does anyway, but the patience to me, I've learned, I've had the success, you know, each and every year play out, whether it's turkeys or deer or anything else, where it's just the extra time that you're willing to sit. It may be boring or whatever, but it just seems like the more you blend in, the more likely you are going to have an experience. Um, so that's patience would be, to me, probably the most underrated.
Well, good answers. Good answers. Well, I suppose we can bring on the best part and pull some embarrassing stories out of you.
So I can think back. So when I first started bow hunting, I made the mistake of going to a big box store, actually with the same last name, which unfortunately my family doesn't own. But I was set up with a bow that was too hard for me to draw, and I didn't have the right draw length. And so I wrestled with this thing, and ultimately, my first opportunity at a buck, when I went to draw, and you forget when it's colder and you have more clothing on, and suddenly it's harder to pull the bow, and I couldn't draw the bow. And so I'm up contorting every single way I can, and somehow the deer just stays standing there. And I finally, and I don't remember what had happened. Somehow I had to reclip. Oh, I know it. So I didn't have an arrow, like an enclosed arrow rest. It was just literally sitting on the two prongs. So at some point through all this, the arrow flops off. So I have to disconnect uh, my release, get the arrow back knocked. Well, then I go and think, okay, I'm just going to give it a big yank. Well, I didn't have the release just clipped on the string and not all the way around it. So when I yanked it back, it pulled it just a few inches and then let the arrow go. And so the arrow just did a pull thunk, right in the ground, and the deer walks off. So I got embarrassed early on the hard way.
At least you didn't like punch yourself in the face.
Yeah, true. That's true. Um, but yeah, I've had countless times with turkeys where, I've called and have had turkeys come in behind, and, you think, again, it gets back to that patience thing where you stand up and you realize that the tom was standing 15 yards behind you instead and was coming in quiet. And, so yeah, last fall had a chance at a coyote, which to me, anytime you get a coyote with a bow, um, and whether it's embarrassing or not, but I was still sitting down. It was right at dusk, was able to draw on the coyote. But when I shot, the, uh, the bottom limb of my bow hit my left inside knee. And so I missed the coyote, but to make it worse, it was enough that it popped the string off of my bow. So I had to go to my archery guy and have him bail me out and get it all put back together again. So
Yeah, people don't realize how finicky they are when you shooting without an arrow or the limb touching something.
it doesn't take much at all. No. Trying to think of any others. Talk pheasant hunting. Every single animal I pursued, there's some embarrassment. More probably on shots that you didn't make than anything else. But
It's pretty
I
easy
don't
to have a short memory when it comes to pheasant hunting, though.
know. You have yeah, because the next one could flush, two more steps away. So you always have to
You
be ready.
you more so remember the day because if you have a bad miss, it's normally not just like one bad miss. It's
Yeah,
usually a sequence of bad misses.
yeah. I had. Yeah, I'm trying to think. So I've had, and I don't know that yeah, I've had bad misses. I have had an encounter with coyotes. In one case, had uh, I use a Fox Pro, and I've got the Fox Pro, and I've got the little feather dang that spins around. And um, the embarrassment part was that I didn't check battery, so it went for just a few seconds and then quit working. The little tail thing kept flipping, and so I was carrying mouth calls, and so I started to screech, as a rabbit, and I'm hunting with my brother-in-law and my other brother-in-law's son, and I, as I'm screeching along, I catch movement, and a coyote's coming right down this terrace, right straight at me, and not and he's on course. He's not looking at owl out in front 30 yards where the decoy is. And so he literally got to probably 15, 20 yards, and I've got a 243 on a rest. And so I start to move thinking that he's going to see that and go out. Well, he's not. So I make a little movement. He jumps up over the thing, and then I miss him. But I'll never forget the look on my brother-in-law's eyes, because he didn't see any of it until he stood up, and then you see this coyote going 100 miles an hour away, and said, "Geez, what happened?" And I said, "Well, you stay right here." And I walked about 5 steps. I said, "That coyote was right there," before he jumped over the terrace. And so it's kind of a fun experience, but
People
not the
underestimate
brightest.
how tough those shots are when they're that close. I mean, your crosshair and bullet point of impact, for one, is 3 inches low. 2, it's just, I mean, it's way harder to line stuff up on the scope and everything.
Yeah, and so we've gotten to the point we carry generally a shotgun and a rifle both. So, and I'm one that if I'm calling, if they're on the move, I'm gonna let them keep coming. I don't want them to stop, because that's when you see some of the fun stuff. And I think I shared the video clip with you. I had turkey hunting several years ago on public land, called in a coyote that was about 60 yards just from lip squeaking. But he surprised me because he just turned and ran at me. And luckily I had a Tacticam on the end of my shotgun. But when he was about 25 yards or so, I pulled the trigger, but it caught me so off guard I hadn't taken the safety off. So there's that moment as this coyote's running straight at you that I clicked the safety off and I shot him, and it was literally at 12 steps head on is where he dropped. And so yeah, it's so coyotes, that, like I said, there's just a rush with when a coyote does all the right things and comes in responding. There's nothing cooler than that to me.
I've called in a few with the lip squeak, and hopefully don't get a lot of people listening, but the people that ditch the e-collars and go back to old school way are going to be the ones that start having success. There's only so many e-collar sound files, man. You do mouth calls, you're going to be different than anybody else.
Yeah, and I don't think any time that I've been bow hunting it hasn't worked. If I see a coyote and you just start to, and unfortunately I've missed far more. I've probably shot 6 or 7 with my bow over the years. In fact, after I ditched the PSE that I couldn't draw, the very first animal I ever shot with my bow was a coyote, and it just, my confidence level raised, extreme after doing that. But
you gotta be pretty stealthy to even get a shot on them. Like a turkey, you're not getting a shot off from a tree stand with a bow because they're in groups, and if you can get a shot back on a group of turkeys in November, I'll be impressed.
Yeah, far and away. Yep.
All right. Well, I appreciate you joining. It's been a lot of fun talking to somebody local.
You bet. Yeah. No, it's great to meet you, Mitchell. And yeah, shoot over that the gentleman's name. I'd like to always interested in conservationists and other people I might be able to learn more from.
All righty. Sounds good. Thanks, Randy.
All right. Thank you.